innings for everybody. We're planning ahead, thinking about what it might look like for this year. There's not a simple answer to that. It's not like we're going to stop guys at 75% of what they've done 2 years ago, or a kind of an arbitrary 20% increase from last year. We have a lot of different ways we can measure it with fatigue and number of pitches, number of innings. We've talked about giving guys more rest. Again, there's a lot of ways that we've talked about what to do, but there's not a clean, simple way that we're going to limit number of innings and number of pitches. It's going to be a case-by-case basis based on a number of different measurements that we're making and taking.
How do you like your staff this year?
How do I like my staff?
Yes.
I like it. We have some really good arms in camp, both from guys that we brought in as free agents and also some guys from our system that are graduating up to this level that are in camp for the first time. It's been great so far. They've been, given the restrictions and the limitations, they've been very accommodating. They've worked really hard to get their work in, to follow the schedule, and I think everyone's progressing pretty well so far.
Dave, how creative do you have to get in terms of planning and experimenting with things like perhaps a six-man rotation, having guys that you can option, finding rest for veterans in the middle of the season? How much can you, I guess, map out ahead of time before you actually get into the season to help, make it as safe as possible as those guys jump that workload?
Yeah, as I said, we started talking about it last year and continued over the winter. A lot of it depends on personnel. The way we're set up right now, we have healthy starters who have been big league starters that have, in the past in their career, have pitched multiple years at full workload. If we end up in a situation, more like last year where we were doing more bullpen games, then we'd have to treat it differently. So for right now, personnel-based, I think we can treat it somewhat normally. No, I don't expect 5 starters to go out and throw 200 innings each. But I also don't expect that we have to cut them off at 100 innings. I think there's some flexibility in there. And as always, it's going to be somewhat determined by performance and health. If we're able to build in extra rest from time to time, we'll probably do it. If we're able to shorten guys up or lengthen them out, we'll do it. But I just don't have a clean answer right now because there's a lot of variables that we're still considering.
How about someone like Erod, who's going from no innings at all? I mean, tough enough to get Nate or Martine or somebody who had, 60 innings or so. For someone who didn't pitch in a competitive environment last year, I mean, do you treat him the way you might if he had missed it all of last year with an arm injury, or are there different things that you apply here? How do you specifically treat him?
He's such a unique case because he missed a whole year and it was not arm related. There's just no, we did research. Our trainers and sports scientists looked all the way back through to find players and pitchers that were in similar situations, and there are not very many. There are not very many guys that missed a whole year for a non-arm related issue. Usually if you miss a year for elbow surgery or anything else, there's a prescribed rehab program that includes a whole bunch of limitations. We don't have that roadmap to follow, but I think in the short term, we're treating Eddie like everyone else, and he's progressing through the spring like normal. I don't know exactly what the season is going to look like. It's something we're aware of, and as I said before, a lot of it's going to be based on performance and fatigue and how his body's responding. And we'll be very sensitive, much more than normal. We'll be very sensitive to how the guys are feeling and the things we can test and measure.
Dave, we've talked a lot to Alex about the closer competition, if you want to call it that, and not naming a guy right now. Specifically, what are you guys trying to evaluate? What do you want to see before you make that call? Whether it's Barnes, Ottavino, whoever it ends up being.
Well, the good part about this is we have a bunch of guys that have experience closing games. We don't have anyone that spent their entire career or even a bulk of their career as a closer, but Brazier has pitched at the end of the game. Barnes has pitched at the end of the game. Ottavino has pitched at the end of the game. We have, certainly it's a strength of ours, even without a specific closer at this point in time, it's a strength of ours that we have experienced guys to pitch the end of the game that have pitched ninth innings before and have closed games out. So I don't know exactly what we're looking for, but I do like the fact that we have multiple guys that have done it and have done it successfully, and that gives us plenty of options.
Would it be too much to ask how to start on the opening day roster?
I don't know yet. Like, again, it's we still have more than a month of spring training left. At this point last year, we had a bunch of healthy starters, and by the time we actually played a game, we didn't. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. He's certainly one of the ones competing for a spot, and the way he pitched last year was impressive, and obviously carries some weight. But big picture, I don't know right now. Certainly, we have guys in camp competing for spots, which is great. It's a good sign that our team is at the point where we have guys with big league experience that are competing for big league spots. That's what you want. That's when you have depth and you have a better team.
Dave, what do you need?
Go ahead, Jen.
I was going to say, what do you want to see Tanner? What do you want to see him get out of spring this? What do you want to see from him this spring, and maybe improve upon that you didn't see from him maybe in those 3 starts last year? Is there something specific you guys are hoping he'll work on that third pitch or anything along those lines?
Definitely the third pitch. The split was new for him last year, so he was relatively inexperienced with it. He didn't use it a whole lot in the big leagues. He's going to have to. If he's going to be a consistent big league starter over time, he's going to have a quality third pitch. And he knows that, and that's probably been on the top of the list of continuing to work on that to the point that he feels comfortable and confident attacking the zone with it and throwing it whenever he needs to. But also generally pitch command. Something he's worked on all through the minors is just throwing more strikes, being more consistent in the zone, being able to work ahead in the count so that he can use his slider and his other off-speed pitches to get guys out.
Hey, Val.
I know Cora was obviously the guy who hired you, but you didn't get a chance to work with him last year. What's that been like so far in camp?
It's been great. It was a tough year all the way around last year with all the things that happened, but I'm excited to be working with Alex. I'm really glad he's back. I love the staff, the coaching staff he's put together. He's really good at what he does. He brings a lot of energy. He's smart. He engages with the players. So all that stuff is great. I'm excited to work with him. We had a few months last year before things changed, but this has been a continuation of that where he can kind of feel me out and see what I like to do, and I'm doing the same with him. So that by the time the season starts, we can work together as best we can.
Hey, what have you guys been able to learn about Nick Pavetta in the time you've had him?
Nick was great last year. Obviously, he performed really well when he came up. But after the trade, we kept him at the alt site for a little while, and it gave the other people in the organization a chance to get to know him. I talked to him plenty of times on the phone before he came up. So I think the relationship started building pretty early last year. We carried it through those last few starts at the end of the year. And then he's worked very hard this offseason. I was in regular contact with him, once, twice a week. He was sending me videos as he was throwing his bullpens leading up to camp. He's worked very hard. He's dedicated himself to making himself a complete big league pitcher and being able to stick in the big league. So I think he's very excited for the opportunity. He's going out there to compete for a spot, and he's worked really hard for it. So I'm excited for him. I'm excited to see him go out there and pitch and compete, and to show that the hard work he put in is worth it and it's going to pay off.
What did it kind of tell you about him that he moved to Fort Myers during the offseason to be able to get time at the complex?
Yeah, we talked about it as the season was ending last year, and he was telling me that he was thinking about coming down here and setting up shop because he didn't have anywhere else he needed to be. And I think it's great. It gave him a chance to be around the staff, to be around the complex, to get his work in consistently. Look, it's not for everybody. Some guys like being able to go back home. Some guys like being here. But for him this winter, it was perfect because it gave him access to the personnel and the equipment and the space that he needed, and he took advantage of it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Dave, Alex said you'd have more of an order of how you're rolling these guys out with the game starting tomorrow. Can you just kind of go over what your schedule is for the next few days as far as who's starting and which games?
Yeah, it's Nate starting tomorrow, and then I don't have my schedule there in front of me. I believe it's Garrett on Monday. And then, sorry guys, I got to think off the top of my head. Thank you. And then Martine on Tuesday and Nick on Wednesday. But we have, this spring's a little different because we're playing shorter games. We can roll innings. We're going to go 6-man rotation early just because I think it fits the pitcher progression better that way. So I like keeping guys on 6 for a little while just to spread out their increases in number of pitches. But that's how it's going to line up for the first couple of days. And, I have relievers lined up for the rest of those extra 4 or 5 innings each game. But relatively quickly, quite honestly, I get to more than 9 innings worth of pitching. And without minor league games, we're going to have to be a little creative in how we make sure everyone gets their work. There will be a number of guys to get work in the big league games. There'll be a number of guys that have to get work in sim games or backfield games. So it's to be determined still. I think it's a flexible situation for us.
Are you looking at Rodriguez starting maybe, I guess Thursday would be a shift day from today?
It will end up being Friday is the day he's going to pitch. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
You made reference to better depth and maybe more options this year. Without being critical of guys last year, I mean, you look at by the third, fourth, and fifth games of last year, you were rolling out guys that were kind of 4A and journeyman guys that had kicked around a little bit. How different is it to have more established starters and more depth to choose from this year?
Well, it's different for sure. We have guys that are going into camp as starters. And truthfully, in early February last year, we had 5 starters also. And then with the trade of Price, and then with Chris getting hurt, and then by the time we actually started the season, Eddie was sick and couldn't play. So, if we were to knock 3 of our top 5 guys out right now, our depth wouldn't be great either. So yes, at this point in time, we have more depth. We have some guys that are established big league starters. But I think it's those couple of pieces underneath that make the bigger difference. Inevitably, we will need more than 5 starters. And having some guys like having Andres here in camp is great. The guy that started a lot in his big league career could easily step in. Having Houck, who pitched last year and competing for a spot now. Pavetta, same thing. Like guys that have a bunch of big league experience, whoever's not in the opening day rotation can step in at any point, and we'd feel good about that.
Hey, what have been your early impressions of Matt Barnes so far this spring? He talked a little bit earlier about last year and sort of how the late start and just how he started hitting his groove and at the 5-week mark with 5 weeks left in the season. What have you seen so far from him this year? I mean, this spring.
Yeah, Matt's been good. The relievers always get into games a little bit later. They're still probably, I'd say, a little over a week away from getting into actual game action. But he's progressing nicely. He threw a live BP the other day. He has another one coming up, I believe, tomorrow. So he's right on pace. He's in good shape. He's throwing the ball well. He's probably ready to pitch in games now, but just by the schedule, we're going to wait a little bit longer.
And for Thursday, would that be Andres or Houck?
It's going to be Andres. Yeah, Andres on Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Dave, just had a quick question on a guy like Sawamura. What do you do in that situation? How long does it take you to get to know him, and kind of what's your approach when you bring in a guy from, a place like Japan?
Yeah, I was able to talk with him a little bit over the winter, over Zoom, after we signed him. And I've been getting regular updates on the throwing he's been doing over there. I'd sent over a program, after we made the signing official. I sent over a progression program for his throwing, which he's followed with no problem. He's in good shape. I think when he gets here, as soon as he clears the intake process, he can jump into the fray pretty quickly. Certainly, we'll want to get our eyes on him, and the trainers want to get their hands on him and make sure that everything's in a good spot. But he should be ready to go. I'm excited to see him jump in. We still have enough time to get him ready and for the season to start on time for him.
What have you heard about him?
Well, I know, by the stuff, he's got a big fastball. It's a high velo fastball and a pretty hard split. I think those are his main 2 pitches. I believe there's a breaking ball he's messed around with from time to time. We have scouting information from his time in Japan, and then we'll mix that with what we see when he gets here. But the reason we signed him and brought him over is because we like his stuff. We think he can pitch as a leverage reliever. Look, we're not going to stick him out there in the 9th inning of the first game, out of fairness to him. But, we'll see how he pitches and how he competes and how his stuff plays. And he performs well, then there's no reason to hold him back.
Dave, with shorter games and, pandemic protocol, how challenging is it to evaluate a Rule 5 guy like Whitlock? I mean, you're always asked to do it in a kind of compressed period of time, and now it would seem even more difficult with fewer games and fewer innings. How do you try to get the best read on him over the next?
Yeah, well, I mean, some of it's already started. We start evaluating and watching guys right away, getting a feel for what he can do and what his skills are and what he's comfortable with. But he's going to pitch in games right away. I mean, we'll put him out there and let him compete. Rule fives can be a great situation, can be a tough situation for the player. Great for him that he's here in camp. He's got a chance to make the team. It can be tough because Rule 5 guys have to make the team and stay. And we don't have the same flexibility we'd have with typically when we bring players up. But we're going to put him out there, let him compete. He's been great so far. He's been great. He's worked really hard. He's very coachable. He's excited to be here. He's excited to compete. He's missed a bunch of time last couple of years with injuries. So I think not only the fact that he's in camp and with a new team, but just the chance to be on the mound and pitch is all really exciting for him. So I'm ready for him to go out there and just let it go and see what he does.
Hey Dave, what do you see as like the best case scenario for Chris Sale?
I don't know right now. He's throwing. He's on a good throwing program now. I threw with him today. He looked pretty good. I haven't mapped out with the trainers exactly what that looks like. I know it's certainly not the first month or so of the year. Beyond that, I don't know exactly what we're looking at. But sometime during the season, I think that goal will be clarified later on the spring, I would hope. But I don't know exactly what it is at the time.
And you mentioned the 6-man rotation just for spring, but what are your thoughts on that? Is that something you'd ever try during the regular season?
Well, my first answer is I'll try anything. If we think it fits our personnel, if we had 6 great starters and that's the way that we felt like our staff lined up best, then yeah, it's something to consider. But every time you go with a 6-man rotation, that's one guy less in your bullpen. So there's always some give and take with it. Like I said, if that's something that we think is going to benefit our pitchers and our team, then we would definitely consider it. If we don't think we line up that way, we think we're better off with 5 starters and giving them some extra rest with off days and utilizing some long guys in the pen, then that's what we'll do. I'm not for or against any of those other than I do want to be aware of all the options and be willing to make adjustments based on personnel. I'm not stuck on a 5-man. I'm not stuck on a 6-man. It's going to have to be whatever our pitchers look like and what way we think it lines up best with the whole staff.
So as of right now, you guys haven't decided yet, right?
No, we haven't decided. I like doing a 6-man in the spring because it, like I said, it spreads out their mound time early on when they're still building up their base. It gives us some flexibility in the schedule. I like it personally because I think it fits the spring training plan better. And then we'll tighten down to a 5, halfway through the games or a little bit towards the end. In preparation, but we look through it, and because of off days early on, I think the majority of their starts the first 2 or 3 weeks are going to be on 6 days anyways, even just with a 5-man rotation because of the off days. So you go 6-man, now we're talking about pitching every 7th day. So there's always some give and take. Again, I don't have an exact answer for you other than we're open to all the possibilities. It depends on who we have and what the schedule looks like, and we'll be creative and flexible.
Hey, I apologize if you've been asked about this. Did you watch Erod today throw the sim game? And if yes, how did he look? If not, what were your reports on him?
Yeah, I was right there watching him standing behind the plate. He looked good. He looked good. Originally we were supposed to have a game today by the original schedule, and probably would have pitched in the game. So it just so happened that it ended up being a sim game because of the way the schedule got changed. But he's good. He's in good shape. He's ready to get out there. He's excited to be pitching again. But mostly, the best thing I can say is he looks normal. You watch him pitch, there would be no indication that he missed a year, no indication that he had health issues. His arm is moving well, his body looks good, his velo is good. So it was a good first step for him, and he'll be back out there later on next week pitching a game.
So just to be clear, Dave, you guys anticipate having Rodriguez available from opening day, that he's going to be able to make starts and take his turn from the start of the season?
At this point in the spring, yes. There's nothing about his progression that's any different than the rest of the starters.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Great. Yeah, no problem.
I think usually I have that thing in my pocket. I was like, I don't have it.